Goodness, what a lot of explosions. And we are live. Greetings, salutations, and all that jazz. And of course, a great big world amber welcome to Sandra Tayler. Sandra, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a nice day.
Wonderful. It's certainly a nice day here because we get to talk to you about your incredible book, Structuring Life to Support Creativity. I am so excited for this topic. This is all about arranging life for busy creatives, for people who have so many things on their to-do list and they still want to write role-playing games or prioritize creativity in their life. I don't know if this is sounding familiar for any of my audience, but this is the life that I live, and I am so hyped to be discussing you know all things about this, but especially, adapting your life to fit your own capacity as well, which is really the topic of um, today's live stream. I will just introduce Sandra properly before we get going because she's far too modest to do it herself. Sandra Tayler is a writer, editor, and publisher with credits in over 30 different titles, including the Schlock Mercenary series and the Planet Mercenary RPG. She is consistently successful crowdfunder and has spent the last 30 years managing a household alongside several small businesses. Her book, Structuring Life to Support Creativity, is a nonfiction book meant to help creative people make more space in the life they have for the creative work they want to do. Oh gosh, it's me. Sandra, I see you live with a husband, three cats, a minion, and a cryptid. I need an explanation. Tell me.
The minion and the cryptid are actually my adult children who live in my house. One of them I've hired as an assistant in my business, and the other one emerges from the depths of the house occasionally, and we wave happily when they are visible. So, yeah.
A minion and a cryptid. It all makes sense. I am so excited about this. So, yeah, I would say let's jump in. I want to hear everything. So how do you make space for creativity in an already jam-packed, busy life? It can seem daunting, especially if you have other bonus challenges like being neurodivergent or chronically ill. But fortunately, we have Sandra Tayler, who's literally written the book on restructuring your life to support your creativity. And I happen to know that those links will be available either in the chat or underneath the podcast. Um, I think we should start at the very beginning, as a wise woman once said. What do you think are the core problems we face as creative multitaskers with busy lives?
Oh, overscheduling is almost certainly, especially if you have a brain that is so full of ideas and is so excited to explore all of them all at once. We and you don't want to say no to any of the shiny possibilities, and so we chronically overschedule ourselves because we don't want to miss the chance for something amazing. Um, and then if you happen to also be a people pleaser or a caretaker in any way, it's really hard to say no as well. And so we accumulate a lot of things. And also, highly interested and curious brains tend to also collect physical clutter because we want to like keep the shiny cool things, and so it becomes, our physical spaces get cluttered, our mental spaces get cluttered, our lives get cluttered, and it is super easy to accidentally prioritize in your days the things that are less important to you and deprioritize the things that are more important to you. And that is one of the core things I always say start with is but figure out what your actual priorities are, and how you want to be.
I think that is so wise. I read a little tip that somebody told me today that they have three lists. One of them is the things I actually have to do. One of them is the things I want to do, and the third one, the least important one, is the things other people want me to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think having that kind of clarity over all the different ideas can, as you say, we have to focus. We have to learn to focus on what we want to do.
Yeah, I actually break this down in the beginning of the book because there's your goals and your priorities and your dreams. Your dreams are the thing far out. That's the direction you want to be headed. That is the, I want my book in a library, or I want to publish my RPG or whatever. That's the far away, that's where you're aiming. Your priorities are your structure. It is how you build your actual structure that is going to carry you forward. It is, I need to keep a roof over my head, therefore I need a day job. I need to actually write the things, so I need to build time for that, building these priorities. And then the goals are the cobblestones in the path you lay, carry your structure forward towards your dreams. And so by having that mental picture, you can figure out what needs to arrange to make it happen.
Wonderful. I can see my live audience here is saying, I feel seen. Stop calling me out. Clearly there is a lot of fellow feeling here
Excellent.
with what you've been saying. So where does it all go wrong? What are some of the common errors people make when trying to fit their creative endeavors, like writing and world building, into this full busy life that we have that is, full of ideas and everything else?
Yes. Common errors. One of the things is just scheduling your creative space at the very edges of your life. Like, you put all the other stuff gets to take up space in the middle, and you slide your creative work out into whatever slivers of time you have left. And while that may be, you may end up needing to schedule around in that way. Just because of priorities and things that are going on. Uh, if you want your creative work to be the core of your life, it should get to take up some of the space in the middle. And then you have to, well, okay, well, I can't do that because there's all this other stuff in the middle. Well, it's the same problem you have when you're reorganizing a room. If you're stuck in the ways that it has been done, you don't see what else is possible. And so you have to figure out, and that's a lot of what I go through is like, okay, take a look at this aspect. Let's look at physical space. Let's look at the way you're handling your calendar. Let's look at, all of these things and break it down and be willing to let go of a working system in order to have a better system. At one point, I had to upgrade my financial. I do all the accounting and bookkeeping for our small business. And in order to fix a problem with the online store, I had to move to new software. But in order to do the new software, I had to upgrade my financial QuickBooks from the desktop version to an online version. QuickBooks was working perfectly for me, but in order to fix the store, I had to let go of a familiar system and learn a new thing. And ultimately, I was way better off. It all works so much more smoothly. But the anxiety over rearranging something that I depended on was so huge. And I think that sort of anxiety traps us very often. So maybe that's one of the core problems, is the anxiety of, will I wreck everything, not letting us move forward.
Yeah. I thought it was very interesting what you said about people pleasing as well. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think that's a very valuable thing for many of us to hear.
Yes. I think it is valuable to separate out the behavior of people pleasing from a caretaker, we take care of each other tendency. The caretaker tendency is healthy and important and part of healthy relationships. You need to tend to the people in your life. You need to tend to the relationships in your life. However, people pleasing for me is when that goes to the point where you are giving away everything that matters to you because you would rather make other people happy than make them upset. And so it's about not making other people upset. You have to be willing to be inconvenient to the people around you. You get to take up space. You get to be inconvenient. And then they get to be grouchy about you being inconvenient. And then you work it out, because that's how a healthy relationship works. It is recognizing that you are allowed to take up space and be inconvenient, and your creative work gets to be inconvenient, both for you and for other people, because it's important enough. to give it that space. And so when you recognize that people pleasing tendency, learning how to do boundaries and learning how to set limits on how much of yourself you are willing to give away. And then you make conscious decisions. There are times in my life where I give away 90% of what I have because I choose to, and because my people need me. But other times I need to pull back and say, no, sorry, you get 20% today. Like I'm at the limit, cope with the rest yourselves. So
I think that's a really important thing to recognize. I think another thing that can potentially hold people back, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on
mhm.
this, is it's not just fear of failure, it's fear of success. So people worry both that, they'll commit the time, they'll make a sacrifice for something else and it won't work, or that they'll
Mhm.
commit the time and they'll make the sacrifice and it will work. And in many ways, both of them are as scary as each other. Do you think that's something that can really feature in people being afraid to carve out the time, afraid to commit that time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We actually have in our brains a whole limbic system that's entire job is to protect us from harm. And so that fear of success, that fear of failure, is the limbic brain wants to keep you from doing the scary thing, doing the risky thing, because succeeding might harm you. The minute you succeed, you are open to criticism. The
Yeah.
minute you are visible, you are a target. And so and you stream, you know this. You've almost certainly experienced this. Oh yes, I'm seeing that
There
face.
is nothing you can do in the world that somebody will not find a problem with, I have learned.
Exactly. Exactly. And then there's this hugely self-protective impulse to draw back, and especially if you reach out and get stung in any way, in a small way, your brain can extrapolate from that and go huge with it. And um and you have to, it just like in a relationship, you cannot have a close relationship with a person unless you're willing to be vulnerable and let that person hurt you. And that's same with our creative work. Unless we are willing to let the results of the work potentially hurt us, we can't put our hearts into actually doing the work and getting it out
I think that is a very deep and pertinent statement. And I can see in the chat someone has said, I can tell I'll be listening to this podcast over and over. And
there.
yeah, Sandra already laying the truth on us.
Good.
So your actual pitched topic for this podcast
Mm-hmm.
was your access needs, adapting your life to fit your capacity. Can you give us an overview of what you mean by this?
Absolutely. When I say access needs, a definition of some terms is helpful here, I think. Um, Access is a term that's often used in disability community and disability discussions, where you're talking about how does somebody get to the things that they need. For example, the simple visual example is people who are using wheelchairs. In order to be able to get inside the building, they have to have a ramp or something. And so, in order for them to access the building and whatever's inside it, we have to build that adaptation, which is the ramp. Um, Building that adaptation helps so many more people than wheelchair users. It helps anybody who has any kind of a mobility issue. It helps anybody who needs to wheel a cart. It helps anybody who wants to push a stroller. So creating these accesses uh, benefits all of us in a lot of ways. And so I'm a strong proponent of disability access, clearly. Um, Capacity is a term borrowed from electrical, circuits and stuff. How much can you hold? How much can you let flow through you before you are drained dry? So capacity of a battery is how much battery life do you have left? And we all have different limits. We also all have different, our limits are variable. One day I can answer all the emails and write all the like 3 blog posts and do the dishes and drive my kids everywhere and then the next day probably because I overtaxed the first day, I am a jellyfish, and I drift around my house feeling like I ought to be doing something useful, and I'm not. I just can't even figure out what it is. And
I would
so,
like, can I share a personal anecdote at this point?
please, yes.
Um, I have lived a very odd life. I was a musician for a long period of
Mm,
time. Being a musician is, you know, large amounts of, a bit here and a bit there and a bit the other place, and then you get on stage and you perform a 5-hour opera. So the demands of one day to the next are very different, and you learn to listen to your body and pace yourself because your body is your instrument.
mhm.
And then World Anvil came along, and suddenly I had a day job, and I would start the week at 150 miles an hour, and I would get to Thursday, and I would be thinking, what's wrong with me? Why am I dying? And it's because I had never learned that when you have a 9 to 5 job day after day, you have to still listen to your body, and you can't just try and do 100. You can't try to perform a 5-hour opera every day. You cannot
No,
do that. Um, and I had this bizarre experience where I had to relearn what my capacity was. I had to relearn what was possible for me day in, day out. And that if I overspent my energy on one day, I simply could not do anything the next. So I feel this in my bones, what you're talking about. Like I really have had this in not just creatively, but in kind of like a more professional work output kind of setting.
yeah,
It's very extreme, and you don't feel it unless you go through a very big change, but it's always there.
yeah. Well, and I love that example because it shows that your life changed and your capacity had to alter, and your usage of what you have has to alter in response to the life that you have. And that's hugely important because none of our lives are static. You know, uh, we saw this writ large with the pandemic where everybody suddenly, like all of the creative people I know, we got 6 months in and everybody was like, I cannot write. I don't even understand. I can barely read. What is going on? And we were all confused. I was confused because, like, on the surface, my life hadn't changed very much. I still pretty much stayed home. I was already a homebody, so I stayed home. And yeah, sure, some shelves are empty at the grocery store, and there's these weird stickers on the floor that I have to follow, and everybody's masked, but like that seems so small. Um, but it was all of the mental calculations and all of this. And so, but pulling it back to the capacity, uh, rather than pandemic emotional processing, which is still a thing, um, still a huge thing. We are still processing that experience. But life changed, and we all had to figure out how to adapt to that. And individual lives change. You know, you get married, you get divorced, you have a child, your child goes to college, you get a diagnosis for a mental health issue, or you get a diagnosis for a physical health issue. All of these things require you to adapt to whatever the new capacity is. And we saw this. My husband has long COVID, so talking about that emotional processing from pandemic, yeah, ongoing. Yeah. Um, so he went from the guy who can work 12 to 15 hours a day to the guy who can only work 4 hours on a good day and less than that on the less good days. And some days it's none. And so the emotional and adapting our workload and our lives and the very structure of everything we do to that changed capacity is part of the actual impetus that got me to write this book. I've been collecting the information on this book for literal decades because we've always been running a creative business and we've always been juggling a million things. But learning how to adapt to the capacity, and that step one to adapting to an adjusted capacity is recognizing that your capacity has changed and processing the emotional grief that goes along with that. We talked about success being scary. Success also often has a grief component in it, which is
Oh,
weird to think of, but any big emotional change requires you to process it in ways that are similar to grief processing. Yeah.
that's so interesting. That's
Yeah.
so interesting. There's a lot of well wishes for your husband from the chat, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. We are adapting. We are figuring it out. It is not what we wish it was, but you take each day as it is. This is the day we get today. So let's make the best of it. Yeah.
I love that. That's a really good way to look at things. So we've talked about access and we've talked about capacity, and
Mhm.
I shared my story about how life changes, and sometimes you have to readapt your energy and what your capacity is. What do we mean by capacity specifically when we're talking about creative work?
Excellent question. I I'm a person of metaphors, and so I jump between them a lot. I apologize if anybody gets lost, um, because I they're such useful tools, but I abandon them the minute I want to talk about something else. Um, let's talk about creativity. If you think of a creativity as the aquifer, the
Yeah.
creative well, you can drive a well down into an aquifer and you pull water up, but you have to have that underground reservoir of energy, of ideas, of things. And there are things that you can do to refill and replenish your aquifer, and there are things that you do that draw upon it and drain it. And um, and so in this context, I would say that capacity is the flow rate of stuff that can come that you can draw out, and the flow rate that you can put things in. And if you are over tapping your creative energy, this is what you experienced with the I'm going 150 miles an hour on Monday and I'm out by Thursday, because you hadn't been doing enough things to let it flow in, and you'd been flowing out much too quickly. And so
Yes.
you have to figure out how those flows go. And so the things that in our lives, there are lots of things in our lives that draw upon our creative aquifer that we don't usually think of as creative. Um, Using the pandemic example, grocery shopping, we had to all rethink how we shopped for groceries. We had to go to the store and say, okay, is this item even available today? And if it's not, well, what else can I use instead? Do I need to change my whole dinner plan? Do I need to? And so there were these 100 questions and about groceries in a dozen ways that you had to rethink and think. And every single decision that you make and every single uh, executive function piece that you use is something that's not available for your creative work at a different time that day or that week. And so that is one of the core things I talk about is, let's do this over broad view. What is going on in your life that is using your creative capacity? If you're doing caregiving work of any kind for an aging parent or a child that you're raising or a friend in need, that's hugely creative. If you are, so these things all draw upon that creative capacity that you have. It's also useful to acknowledge that some forms of creative work actually make us more energized when we're done than when we started. For me, writing often does that. It becomes this respite, this when I emerge from writing, yes, I am tired, but my well is also fuller.
Yeah. When I
And
have written, I feel great.
exactly.
So yes, I totally understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so recognizing and learning, okay, which are the things, even though they make me tired, feed into the well, and which things are just pure drain. And do I allow that drain because it accomplishes something else that's like it's a priority of mine? Like, you know, I let my day job drain me because I like paying my bills, and right now that's the only way to do that. So, day job gets to be a drain and it sucks, but we try and set boundaries around it.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
No, I think that's really important, and I think there is a major, if there's something that is major that you've said there, is the creative well is there, and things that are non-creative still draw water from the creative well. And I think that's
Absolutely.
that's what is so easy for us to forget sometimes, when we come to the the desktop, or we come to the computer, or we come to the notebook, and we think, well, where is the creativity? Like I haven't done any creativity in a while. There should be inspiration in there. But you've been caring for your aged mother, and you just moved house, so all of your routines are gone, and then you discover that actually you've used up all of the juice in the well, essentially.
Yeah. Well, and a common question, people are struggling with is you do all these things all day, and now it's time you did the thing you were told to do. You've set aside a time. This is your creative time, and you arrive at it, and you just the well feels like it's dry or it's blocked up or whatever. And I love one of the things that we've learned as a result of my husband's long COVID is that it's not the drain rate that's the problem, it's the refresh rate. It's
Interesting.
how do you get energy for him, at least? How do you get his body to recharge so that he and that became very useful to me. I'm like, oh, okay. So if on a regular basis the pattern is I am too drained to do my creative work, is there some practice or something I could institute, a small 15-minute focused re-energizing recharge thing where I can like do that I plugged my phone into the supercharger and now I've got 50%. I had 10 and now I've got 50, and 50 is not great, but it's enough to get started,
Yeah.
you know. And figuring out what that is for creating capacity that you felt like you didn't have. What can you do that will actually refresh versus the thing your impulse tells you to do, which is the thing, the binge watch or the mindless gameplay because you just want to rest.
Yeah.
And those things do potentially recharge and allow rest, but they often don't do that fast recharge. They're
So
an extended thing.
what are some of the things that obviously everybody is different, but what are some of the things that we can try to um, recharge ourselves, or supercharge ourselves if we're feeling drained?
Yeah, clearly it's going to be different per person. I've seen people do power naps, a literal take a nap, 20 minutes, and you can teach your body and brain to do that uh, so that you basically rebooted, you shut down and rebooted, turn it on and off again. Um, and then I've heard people talk about going for a walk. Like you're deliberately, okay, I'm going to glance at my work in progress. I'm now going to go for a 15-minute walk and let my brain ruminate over the things that I glanced at. I've seen rituals around I am going to get my special beverage that has this, and then the smell and the somatic of the hot beverage and the ritual of making it sometimes helps put you back into the space. One of the things that I've discovered for me is that if when I am taking breaks, I read instead of watch. And by read I mean long form works like a book. It can be a digital book, but if I'm reading a book rather than reading snippets on social media, that puts my brain more into a writing space. I am more able to write in the evening if I've been reading books at 10 a.m. instead of scrolling social media at 10 a.m. because it
Amazing.
puts the words, yeah. So it's a matter of figuring out what are the things that feed in and how can you put more of those in your day.
Fantastic. I think at some point we need to do, I'm looking at the live audience here. At some point we need to do a big old blog post of things you can try, because there are
Yeah.
some really interesting ideas here. I'm seeing walks, naps. I'm seeing people say that sometimes a cup of coffee just does the trick.
Yep.
It's very different for different people. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, a list of things to try, I feel, would be a
Mhm.
useful blog post for us.
Agreed.
So, how do you judge your own capacity? And what kind of things can make it harder to predict, like health issues or neurodivergence? I say these because these are the
Mhm.
ones that I know personally can really throw a spanner in the works from day to day.
Right. A large part of this is recognizing uh, it's a process of learning yourself and learning your own uh, body and what does it look like when you start getting a little tilted, to use a gaming term. Um, and I know that some brains and bodies are more inherently in tune with themselves, and other people have to come at understanding what their body is telling them from a very intellectual, I have to figure out what my body is doing kind of way. I've got a couple of kids who are neurodivergent, and their body does stuff and they don't know why, and they have to then figure out what is going on and how they feel about it. Like emotions are, there's also seems to be this disconnect with emotions, and so I'm going to acknowledge that right up front. Some people are going to find this self-awareness an easier task than other people will, which right there is like the core problem of access and capacity right there. People will be like, oh, I just have a cup of coffee and that fixes me, which is great and it's wonderful. I'm so glad it fixes you. You cannot then extrapolate and say a cup of coffee will fix everyone, because
Yes.
it will not. And so that some of these conversations go awry when we try to blanket apply a big solution, a single solution to multiple people. So it comes back down to looking at your life and starting to recognize, okay, when am I out of whack? When am I starting to feel sensory overload? How do I re-regulate myself when I am feeling overloaded? I am a fairly introverted person. And so one of the things I have to do, there comes a point where I'm like, I have been out in the world. I went grocery shopping and I helped my daughter with her baby, and I did this and I did this, and I've talked to people, and I've been like, even if a lot of my hours were physically alone, I was still in my brain engaged with other people. I then need to pull back in and seriously introvert in some way. And so while I said that thing about, maybe don't binge watch, sometimes that is exactly what I need in order to re-regulate. I put a timer on it. I'm going to watch one 30-minute episode of The Office because they expect nothing from me. Those people, I can just watch them and be amused, and they don't need anything from me. And I just need 30 minutes where no one needs anything from me. And I need it to be uninterrupted, because if you interrupt it, I need to do another 30 minutes. And so, but learning, how do you re-regulate when you get sideways, when you get tilted? How do you come back to center? How do you come back to balance? And figuring that out might be as simple as, oh, okay, I thought about it and now I know what it is. Or it might be a series of experiments that you try, you know, uh, try this, see if that works. Um, my husband discovered putting his legs up so his knees are above his head and a cold pack on his neck. Spend 10 minutes with that, and some breathing recharges him in ways that we did not expect from a cold pack.
Yeah.
Yeah. So learning how to judge your own capacity is partly that, but also figure out what your canaries are. Canaries used to be taken down into coal mines because if there was CO2 down there in the mine, the canary would die first. And so then the humans could know to get out. So what is the thing that goes broken that before you even realize you're out of balance? For me, it's email. When I'm working at capacity, my email box is under control. It is less than one page, so I have less than 20 emails waiting for my attention. When my email box starts lapping over and I cannot see everything on one page, I've learned that means I'm tapped. I'm beyond my usual range of things. And so that means, okay, time to pay attention. Is there something I can cut out? Is there something I can say, you know what? Laundry is just not going to happen for at least 5 days. So, we're just not going to do that because I'm at past my capacity. I'm outside of it, clearly. And so finding what your signal is. What is the thing that goes out of control first when you're just beyond your capacity.
Yeah.
Those are some things.
I was smiling like that because definitely the mailbox is one that I recognize. And again, I'm saying in the chat, my mailbox is never empty.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of us feeling the mailbox. Are there other things that you've seen or maybe you've heard other people talk about with regard to canaries? Other things that we could consider to watch out for?
Yes. Uh, it's kind of the same thing, but text messages and notifications, if those are out of control, now you may be a person who lives with 1,000 notifications constantly. I don't. But if that feels out of control, um, a let's see, clutter around your house is physical clutter is almost certainly one of the canaries that people can find. Um, and uh, and then often it's useful to have humans around you who are willing to watch out for you, because more than once I've realized I was sideways when my husband looks at me and says, "Okay, you seem annoyed," and I'm like, "I'm not annoyed," in that voice. And then I hear myself and I'm like, "Yes, yes, you're right, I am annoyed, but I'm not annoyed at you. I'm annoyed at this, and I'm carrying that annoyance in my head, and it is cluttering up our. And so having some people who can say, "Okay, you're it feels like maybe you need to take a break," is helpful. So
Yeah, I will say for me definitely when the system of dishwasher empty, dishwasher full goes to pot, I know that I just need to take a little bit of time because
mhm,
that, the kitchen is the center of our house. Once that goes wrong, everything kind of starts spiraling out from that. Everything gets
absolutely.
under control. It grows tentacles. Who knows what's going on there? But
Yeah.
I will say that's one I identify personally as a canary, if you will.
Mhm.
Um, if that's gone wrong, yeah,
Yep.
stuff's gone wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A few people in the chat are saying nausea or headaches or tension
Mm,
headaches. These get so very physical canaries, very physical symptoms there. Um,
absolutely. Yeah. That's there. Yeah.
very interesting. So we've talked already about access. What are access needs that creatives most often forget to address? What do we forget about for ourselves?
Um, okay, this is a dumb one, but your eyesight,
Mm,
like especially if you've reached the age of 40 or higher, go get your eyes checked, because if you're not seeing well, and this I actually had this happen to me. The glasses that I usually wear broke. And so while I'm waiting for my new glasses to arrive from Zenny Optical, I had to go back to an older pair. And there was a day where I was just not being able to get myself to go to the grocery store. And my husband, who, again, lovely to have a human in the house who can read you, was like, "Let me fix your glasses." And he did a quick super glue so I could put on my other glasses. And suddenly I realized, oh, I can see the list. I was not going to the grocery store because reading the list was hard. And I
mm,
didn't even recognize that that's why it wasn't happening. And so it's little things like that. So, uh, one of the things that we've been doing a lot with my husband is because it's a chronic fatigue problem, reducing the number of steps he has to take to find things in the house, you
mm,
know?
interesting.
And so, like, putting we need scissors in all of the rooms instead of having to go upstairs to get the scissors. We need so there's these little access need things that you can adapt for neurodivergent brains. Adapting your living space to the way your brain actually works instead of trying to train your brain to do the things that way you're supposed to do them. The example I use for this is that there are perfectly functional adults whose clothes never see the inside of a drawer. Your clothes can go from your body to the dirty clothes hamper, to the washing machine, to a clean hamper, and then back onto your body. And nobody, it doesn't matter. Like if folding the clothes and putting them away is a problem, and it becomes this huge source of guilt and shame. That guilt and shame is drawing energy out of the creative well. You could do something else with that energy. So I give you a pass on putting clothes away. I also give you a pass on the coat closet. Like the idea of opening a closet, taking off your coat and opening a closet and putting it on a hanger and putting it in the closet and closing the closet. That's so many steps. In our house, we have hooks by the door. It's literally coat off body, coat on hook, done. And so organizing for efficiency of process rather than aesthetic look is a huge boon to neurodivergent brains. This means your house will have baskets and piles, and yes, there's a problem of visual clutter that you do need to figure out how to solve, but still finding the system that works for you instead of the system that the decorator thinks things ought to have, you know. And by decorator, I mean the decorator in our brains who tells us how we should be doing things.
Things are supposed to work.
Exactly.
I'm using air quotes for those of you on the podcast.
Exactly.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Things should work exactly as suits you best, not as somebody told you, not even your
Absolutely.
mother.
Yes.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the very eye-opening things was realizing that I could put things in boxes that didn't have lids, and then I would put them away.
Mm-hmm.
If they have lids on, I won't put them away. But the minute they don't have lids on and I can just drop them in there, all of a sudden my surfaces are clean because I will put things away if I don't have to wrangle with a lid and try and figure out which box it is. No, if I can see where they're supposed to go, I can put them
Yeah.
away. If I can't, then I won't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and items have homes. The keys live here. This is where the keys go. If I find the keys anywhere else in the house, it is time to put them in their home.
Yeah.
And then creating negative space around, the keys live here and nothing else lives here. Because if I go to put my keys away and the space is occupied by anything else, that's when the keys end up in the fridge.
Yeah, and then you end up on a side quest trying to put the thing back
Exactly.
where it's supposed to be. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Neurodivergent side quests are a giant
exactly.
suck of energy. I feel it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about, access needs for creatives and especially many of us are neurodivergent and all of us have special brains. Everybody's brain is special, a little bit quirky. Why not organize life to be a little bit easier for our very special brains? Why do you think there's resistance about thinking about these kinds of things as creatives?
There is always the resistance to using the adaptive aid for ourselves. You know, I am perfectly fine with everyone out in the world having canes, having a walker, but then I don't want to admit that I need the cane or the walker, you know.
Mm.
And you see the same thing with meds, you see the same thing with any other adaptive tools. Like there's this feeling like we should just be able to think ourselves out of it. We're smart people, right? We're super
Yeah.
smart. We're super creative. We're super, maybe we're energetic, maybe we're tired, but we feel like, well, I can just handle it. Um, and that's true. You are smart and you are creative and you can just handle it, but why should you? Like
When it's drawing from the creative well, like we were talking earlier.
exactly. My mom didn't get glasses until she was 13 years old for a variety of reasons. And at 13 years old, she put on glasses and realized that trees have individual leaves on them for the first time in her life, you know.
Wow.
And she had been functioning fine and getting good grades. They just sat her at the front of the classroom. And if something was hard, another student's like, there's all these things that you can do to get by without the glasses. Or you can just get the glasses. And all that energy can go elsewhere. And so I think we have to let go of the idea that any kind of disability is a weakness. It is merely a need that you have.
Yeah.
And there are tools to help you with that need. And you should use all of the tools available to you so that you can free up time for the things you'd rather be doing.
Yeah. There's a very interesting comment in the chat here from someone who says, I think neurospicy creators, so people who tend to be
Right.
neurodivergent, have a tendency to punish themselves for not being normal. Do you think that might be part of this as well? Does that sound familiar?
Absolutely. The shame spiral is real.
Yeah.
The shame
Yeah.
spiral is real. You're living in a world that's not designed for your brain. And so you have had messages since you were very tiny that you should be different, that you should adapt, that you should, you know, and those messages worm their way all the way in. And as adults, you then have to figure out how to gain a level of self-acceptance instead, and to learn to that it is not a moral failing to need help.
Yeah. I think there's another aspect to this that I've certainly seen in many different creators who are friends, and that is self-gaslighting. The kind of, no,
Mhm.
no, it's not really a problem. No, no, this shouldn't be a problem. No, no, I can manage. I'm normal. I definitely don't have whatever it is because it's not serious. And I
Right.
think that even if it's not serious, even if you're not neurodivergent, even if you're only slightly neurodivergent, even if you have one little toe on the neurodivergent spectrum, first of all, welcome. You are loved. Secondly, like, why not just do the thing that's easy? Why not create a path of least resistance so you can use that energy for what you want to use it for rather than stepping up a little tiny step every single day?
Absolutely. Exactly.
Sorry, I will go off my soapbox now.
No, I
But I
love
feel
that
very
soapbox.
passionate about this.
I
Okay.
love that soapbox. Stand on it all you want. Shout to the world.
That's what we're going to do, Sandra. That's what we're going to do. So, Sandra, you literally have written the book on this, as I mentioned earlier. It is called Structuring Life to Support Creativity. I'm going to be very cheeky now. I'm going to ask you for maybe your top three nuggets, some quick, easy to implement solutions that we could be thinking about right now to start restructuring our lives to support our own creative endeavors. Right now, we're in the middle of summer camp. I have my beans writing
Mhm.
32 articles of 300 words each. It's intense. There's a lot of writing going on. How can we try to start restructuring our own lives at least a little tiny bit today?
Okay. Um, One, take a look at your physical space. Is there something in your physical space that you can do to make it easier to get into your work zone? Um, you know, can you literally clear the path to your chair? Can you pre-plan? Think about like Airbnb owners and how they want to create an inviting space. What can you do to create an inviting space for your future self to just walk up to and sit down in? And so that's tip one: physical space, make a small improvement. Two,
As you say this, I am looking at the giant pile of cat sand that is next to my office door that I have not moved since I cleared the spare room. So, thank you for
yeah,
that tip. I shall do that after this live stream.
absolutely. Um, Tip two, what's your mental load? Take a look at all of the things you are carrying in your head, and maybe sit down either with a person you can talk to if you're a verbal processor, or writing if you're a written processor, and brain dump all of the things that you are carrying in your head. Take 15, 20 minutes or less, depending on how, just write about all of the stupid stuff that you have going on that you need to get done, and dump it all onto the page, because now it's on the page and the page can hold it for you and you don't have to pick up all of it again. Some of it, you can just leave it on the page and walk away. It's done. Others of it, you're going to make tasks out of whatever. But so the brain dump post is your friend.
I
Um,
will
the,
I will
yeah.
say as a verbal processor, if you don't want to burden other people with this, voice to text is very useful. So you can
Ah,
whack on voice to text on something. I'm very verbal, but sometimes I don't want to share my innermost crazy with somebody else. I want to keep it for myself. Voice to text it. It'll be there in the document for you. It's there. It's
beautiful.
waiting for you in the same way, and you get to use the process that's most comfortable for you. I do this quite a lot. So yeah.
Absolutely. I love it. Love it. The third thing is a little bit bigger, but it is to say out loud that grief is a creative process. Grief is the process by which you break down what was and find the pieces of what will come next. And so, yeah.
What
And
are you
so,
doing to me, Sandra? You're gonna make me cry on stream.
so sorry. But also, you need to know this. You need to know this. And if you have any kind of a grief process going on in your life, take a moment to acknowledge it to yourself, maybe in that brain dump post, and say, and give yourself permission to feel the thing that's grieving you, and give yourself some time, and and then you can pick up and move on with your day. But also, and griefs are not always big. I mean, during the pandemic, I saw so many people grieving the haircuts they couldn't get. We grieve all kinds of little stuff. So anyway, so that's the third tip.
Yeah, that is wonderful. Thank you, Sandra. And again, the chat is saying there are onion cutting ninjas in the space,
There you
just to let you know. So those are some quick, easy things. Obviously, in your book, you go a lot deeper. In fact, you know what? I'm going to swap these questions around because I think that's better. What else can we find in your book, Structuring Life to Support Creativity? I'm very excited about this. We have been sharing, and again, folks, on the podcast, you will be able to find the link to the pre-orders as well. It was on BackerKit. It was redonkulously successful. Of course it was. Congratulations on that,
Thank
Sandra.
you.
And it has just ended on BackerKit now, but you can now go and pre-order it, folks. So I have shared those links. Do go and check it out. I was sold instantly. I already backed it. Like I'm here for it. What else can we find in this book?
Well, you mentioned your implementation. There's a chapter on implementing things. As I was, running the BackerKit, I actually asked people, what are things that you want, questions you want answered, and they came up with some great things. And I was like, ooh, I need to write more things. So one of the chapters I'm going to be writing is the weight of the world. How do you keep creating when your brain is freaking out over climate change or politics or all of these things? And so that is one of the things that's going to be in the book. Also, how do you believe in your own work when you could quietly stop creating and no one would notice? How do you believe in it enough to actually get it made? Is another thing that's going in there. I have a whole really cool section on motivation and stopping and starting, and how do you get yourself to, start from cold engine, start from neutral engine, start from hot engine. How do you get yourself to actually, like, logically you want to do the thing, but you keep not doing the thing? Why do you, and how do you get yourself over those humps? So these are some of the things. The BackerKit page, which is still up and visible, does have a full table of contents listed over there. So
yeah, there is a lot of love. Someone has said, I found a great Christmas gift for a few friends. Someone else has said, I just need this book. I just need it when it comes out.
It will not be available for this Christmas, sadly. It will
No.
probably be early next year before it's actually physically available. But
I'm sensing a Christmas card with a book blurb inside. That's what I think is going under somebody's tree.
There we go.
So much in this book. As I said, for one, I'm so excited about it. How do you suggest we approach this big stuff, the systemic changes, the large stuff that we want to change in our lives? You mentioned at the beginning ripping down everything and building it back up from the bottom, which sounds so exciting and daunting. How can we go about this? Do you have any meta tips for going about this, maybe without completely freaking out? What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. I don't know if you watch home renovation shows. I do sometimes. But there's always this scene at the beginning where they look at the space and they're like, and they always talk about, well, is this a load bearing wall? Can we rip this out, or is it load bearing? And so you need to figure out, what are the load bearing structures in your life? What are the things that you really just kind of have to work around? And what are the things that you can move? And you can move a load bearing pillar. People do all the time, but you also have to be careful about how you do it. So if you're doing a large scale change, You know, moving house is what I would call that you're changing a bunch of pillars. You get divorced, if you get married, if you change your partnership, your romantic relationships, if you move out of your parents' house or move back into your parents' this structure of your life is changing dramatically. That is, kind of huge renovations in your creative life, and you have an opportunity to make choices about what you set up next. Um, the vast majority of us are not in a position to do massive renovations. We instead have to implement much smaller changes. The encouragement I give you is that small changes implemented over time change your trajectory immensely. And so, while it feels like you're not doing much, a simple change that gets you to sit in the chair twice as often. You're sitting in the chair 3 days a week instead of 2 days a week, or 4 days a week instead of 2 days a week. Over time, that accumulates and it's huge. And I often recommend that people, you can go for the renovation. We all kind of want to, just like, especially with creative brains who are like all in and want to just, I'm going to do all the things and I'm going to change this and this and this and this. And you get overwhelmed and abandon all of it all at once because it's too much. You're much better off by picking a change that you can implement and try and pick one that makes your life easier instead of one that requires ongoing willpower to implement. And so you can slide into the change, and then you put the willpower into barriers around uh, falling out of the new habit. The simple example of this is if you realize that you're on Facebook too much and you need to be off of Facebook, you can just say, I will spend less time on Facebook. Then you have to tell yourself that every day. Or you can implement a software solution that actually limits your time on Facebook. Or you can delete your Facebook account. Or you can cancel your entire internet, which will create other problems for you. But I mean, like, there's these layers of, but you can put a decision, a thinking between you and falling into the old habit, rather than letting the path just stay clear. So those are just some implementation thoughts.
That's wonderful. I think that's exactly what we needed, and I think for everyone here who's been listening to you and so enjoying what you've had to say, knowing that there are options that you can rip everything down and build it up, or you can, as you said, small changes over time make a huge bearing on your trajectory. I think
They do.
that's very wise. Sandra, I am so incredibly excited about this book. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
It has been an absolute pleasure, and I do hope maybe once the book is, available no longer in pre-order, maybe you will come back and talk to us a little bit more about, how it's been and stuff, perhaps.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many topics in this book that we can dig down on.
It would be an absolute pleasure to have you back, and literally everyone in the chat has just been saying, I need more of this. I need more of Sandra. So Sandra, please do come back.
Absolutely.
Just before we go, folks, I have some good news for you. We have been running a raffle, exclamation point raffle, to take part in these final very few minutes because um, I actually did not know about Sandra straight away until Tillers came to me. Tillers is a wonderful member of our community. And he said to me, I've just found this book. You must get Sandra on for an interview. And by goodness, he was right. And the very same Tillers has very kindly funded a raffle of 3 ebooks of Sandra's books. So without further ado, I will say, Sandra, it's not ready yet, the ebook. When can we expect the ebook? When is that coming, do we think?
I'm hoping November.
Okay, wow. Okay, so
Yeah.
if you win this raffle, you may get the ebook by November. Let's see. I'm going to pick 3 winners. Please say something if I call your name to claim your prize. I've got Cedra Honnet. I've got the big is shy, I believe that is. And I have Kitty Witch 94. Please say something in the chat to claim your prize. And a massive congratulations. This book is absolute freaking gold. It will literally change your life. All right, Kitty Witch has claimed their prize. Cedra Honnet has claimed their prize. And the Big Shy. Yes, there we go. All right, folks, email me at hello@worldanvil.com and we will get all of that sorted. That's hello@worldanvil.com. Comes to me personally, by the way. So hi, if you ever need something, I'm right there. And that is a wrap. Folks, thank you so much for your wonderful comments, for your very vulnerable sharing of your own personal experiences in the chat as well. That was really wonderful. And of course, massive thanks. Sandra, you have been a wonderful, wonderful bringer of hope and joy today, I think I can safely say. You have shown us that there are ways forward, and there is nothing more valuable than that.
Yes. Thank you very much for having me here.
Oh my goodness. I'll be dragging you back with a shepherd's crook. You just see if I don't. All right, my most beautiful of beans. You go off and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Be very, very good to each other. And I will see you all tomorrow when we're revealing the very final world building prompts of summer camp. It's the diamond reveal. I have 10 spicy prompts with 8 spicy sponsors to share world building love on our new world building theme. So I will see you all then. And in the meantime, grab your hammer and go world build. Bye, everyone.